Hi, and welcome to another edition of Your Health with Dr. Christy. My name is Dr. Christy Reisinger, and today I'll answer the question, should I take the COVID-19 vaccine? Let me begin by discussing the different types of vaccines being developed. There are two main groups, the protein-based vaccine, which is the older way, and the gene-based vaccine, which is the newer way. And each group has two types within it. The first type is subunit vaccines, which is an older way of developing vaccines. This includes the current hepatitis B vaccine and the HPV vaccine. There are currently no vaccines from this method in phase 3 trials for COVID-19, but there are 4 that are currently in phase 2 trials. The second type is another older method and uses weakened or inactivated virus. An example is the MMR vaccine and the flu vaccines that we have every year. There are currently 3 COVID-19 vaccines using this method that are in phase 3 trials. Now, the first of the newer methods are vaccines that use viral vectors. An example of this technique is the Ebola vaccine that received approval in Europe in July. 2 COVID-19 vaccines are using this method and are currently in phase 3 trials. One from AstraZeneca that's been in the news lately, and the other from a Chinese-based vaccine company. And lastly, another new type of vaccine are ones that uses nucleic acids, either DNA or messenger RNA vaccines. There are 2 vaccines that use this method in phase 3 trials for COVID-19. One is from Moderna, which is in partnership with the NIH, and the other from Pfizer. But in the past, none of this type of vaccine has been approved outside of research, although vaccines for rabies, influenza, and Zika are in small, early phase trials right now. In newer gene-based vaccines, such as the viral vector and nucleic acid vaccines, scientists synthesize and insert genetic instructions from the SARS-CoV-2 virus to induce immune responses in the vaccine recipient. But more specifically, the viral vector technique transports genetic information in a less harmful virus, often a common cold-causing adenovirus. This is what was done with the Ebola vaccine that was approved in July. They used a common cold adenovirus to carry the information into the cells. DNA and messenger RNA vaccine designs deliver naked nucleic acids, or more recently, encapsulate them in a carrier nanoparticle. There have been some messenger RNA vaccines in small, early phase trials for rabies, influenza, and Zika, as I mentioned previously. Well, what makes this newer technique better? Well, first, the same production and methods and manufacturing facilities can be used to make vaccines for different diseases. And unlike vaccines developed using older methods, the newer vaccines aren't grown in eggs or cells, which is time-consuming and costly. These vaccines are developed in a test tube. This makes them easier to develop quickly and hopefully in large amounts, although some of them have never been mass-produced before. So why are these vaccines getting developed so quickly? The reason we're seeing such early production is twofold. Number one, most vaccines take an average of 10 years for development, and the main reason for this is cost. Pharmaceutical companies do not want to take on the financial risk until they're certain that the vaccine under development works and there will be a buyer for it. Some of this financial risk has been eliminated because the United States government has pledged billions of dollars to fund the vaccine development and to purchase proven vaccines. Furthermore, vaccine developers had a head start after using vaccine research for prior coronaviruses that caused worldwide outbreaks at a much smaller scale, including SARS in 2002 and MERS in 2012. Well, what can be expected from an approved vaccine? The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has said that a COVID-19 vaccine will need at least 50% efficacy to be approved. If that sounds low, let me give you the comparison that most influenza vaccines usually have between 40 to 60% efficacy. Patients will likely need a 2-shot series to help provide adequate protection, and it's not clear when or if the vaccine would need to be repeated after a period of time. Other questions that need to be answered with ongoing studies is whether the vaccine will help prevent spread to others and whether our most elderly will be able to mount an adequate immune response to the vaccine so that it provides protection to them. I think answering these questions will help determine who should get the vaccine and in what timeline. Of course, tolerability is always important. People in the studies have reported local reactions and feeling like they're under the weather for a day or two after the vaccine. Most of us have heard about AstraZeneca's viral vector vaccine that was halted after a woman in the UK developed transverse myelitis, or inflammation of the spinal cord. The trial has been resumed in Europe, and people need to realize that with this number of people receiving the vaccine in the phase 3 trials, health issues that may not be related to the vaccine will always occur. For example, if you take an aspirin the day before you have a heart attack, it does not mean that the aspirin caused the heart attack. I was personally reassured that the process for safety and monitoring worked, despite the enormous pressure to produce a vaccine quickly. When a potentially severe side effect developed, the study was halted until more information could be gathered. Furthermore, the top 9 pharmaceutical companies have pledged that they will not move forward in production of their vaccines if they're not proven to be safe and effective, and until all steps in evaluating this have been completed. At the end of the day, I know there are some of you out there that no matter what data and information is presented, you'll never take a vaccine against COVID-19. And I'm not going to try to convince you otherwise, because some of you are also the ones that think COVID-19 death numbers are fake, and that SARS-CoV-2 was developed in a lab and is being used as a biological weapon, or that hydroxychloroquine can cure severe COVID-19. But for the others of you out there that are on the fence about the vaccine, I'd like to say this. Number 1, just like wearing a mask, receiving a vaccine protects others around you. There are some that cannot take the vaccine. This is personally close to my heart because my mom is one of those people. 3 years ago, she developed bone marrow cancer, received a bone marrow transplant, and is not able to receive vaccines quite yet. So I plan to take a COVID-19 vaccine to protect her. Number 2, even though most people, especially younger ones, will have mild to moderate illness with COVID-19, I have heard from many viewers that the loss of taste and smell has lingered for months for some of you. Losing your sense of taste and smell severely adversely affects your life. You cannot taste delicious pasta or smell coffee in the morning. You can't smell your husband's cologne or the cool, clean air after a rainstorm. And we can't predict which one of you will have this happen. Number 3, also, we're starting to see confirmed data that people can get COVID-19 twice. Researchers have been able to check the genetic code on the SARS-CoV-2 infections to understand that they are indeed different infections. Most of the time, the second infection is less severe, but not always. And number 4, and lastly, we're hearing more and more about the COVID-19 long haulers. For more specific information about this, please see my prior video with a COVID-19 update published on September 2nd. These are patients with lingering symptoms from mild COVID-19 that were previously healthy. Lingering symptoms like fatigue and shortness of breath and memory issues have been seen without a clear treatment or end in sight. I hope each of you will consider taking the vaccine against COVID-19 when it becomes available to you. I expect it will be available to first responders first, and then the next groups are still to be determined. But for the average American, I predict that the COVID-19 vaccine will not be widely available until spring of 2021. And by then, we should have lots of data. I encourage each of you to continue to do your own data-based research and beware of websites that use fear, political rhetoric, and conspiracy theories to scare you into doing nothing. By doing nothing, you are still making a decision. I do want to end by saying I have no financial interest with any pharmaceutical company and will not financially personally gain from vaccines. Thanks again for joining me.